Hi, my name is Jessamy McKinney. I'm the behavior interventionist at Sawyer Elementary. I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about the important work that Ames Community School District has been engaging in around critical consciousness. We're going to start off with our purpose and our priorities. This is the slide you'll see on most of our professional development videos. It's to help us understand where our focus is for the day. And our focus for today is around educational equity improvement, as well as a safe and responsive system that promotes the mental health and well-being of every individual. In your Google Classroom for this professional development, there will also be a reflection form. That's a Google form that you can click on where you can put your name, and you will also be answering some questions that are posed to you during this slideshow. And then at the end, you'll submit it so we know if you've completed this professional development. So what is critical consciousness work? It's just an introduction and the start of a journey together. We understand that even though we're adults, we are lifelong learners and we are going to make mistakes too. And one thing that's really important is being real and transparent with these young students because they can see right through us. And if we make a mistake and own up to that mistake, they're going to have that much more respect for us and understand that we're growing in this together. So this is not one and done. It's not a quick fix. And we can ask questions as we go, especially to those individuals in your building. There are some learning outcomes and courageous conversations that surround the learning of critical consciousness, because we know that it's a difficult topic and it involves devastating realities about our shared history. But this is truly a knowledge is power moment. Once you know some of these difficult realities, you can support positive change for our educational system and for our students. So we just expect you to stay engaged, be okay if you're uncomfortable, understand that speaking your truth is important but difficult. And if you don't feel closure at the end of this professional development or at the end of a difficult conversation with a coworker around critical consciousness, that's okay. That just means that you're still in the learning process, and we all are. So welcome to the team. So what purpose do schools really serve? As we may have learned, especially during our most recent times, it's not just an academic center. They are places where our new generations are formed, basic needs are being met, and our youth are learning how to treat one another. This is the formation of our society, so this is big. We're going to start with their basic needs, but we also want to make sure that they're feeling safe, that they feel loved and belong, that they understand that their self-esteem is very important, that we recognize them, that they have a sense of freedom in the school building, and that they start to have self-actualization so they can understand who they are going to become as an individual. So this is a few questions that we want to pose just to help you get in the right mindset. You can answer these questions on the form that I showed you a little bit ago. If you don't feel like you can write a whole sentence, it's okay to just put a few bullet points, a few words or thoughts, and you're welcome to pause this video because I know sometimes I talk fast. So, what intrigues, frustrates, or concerns you or confuses you about racism in the United States? A heavy question. Why does Ames Community School District need to talk about race and racism? And what is something that you think families and students of color would want us to know and learn? So once you've answered those questions, you can restart the video and we're going to start back up with educational equity. So let's be clear, this is not easy and this is not something that has yet happened in our educational history. This work takes a desire for real change, and this work also takes humility. We may not have been taught this before, but we are learning it now, and it's our responsibility to remain open and listen to minoritized voices. So we want to make sure that we're eliminating potential educational barriers, no matter where you come from, no matter your gender, the color of your skin, your social status. You should be able to have an equal opportunity to education or an equitable opportunity. We want to make sure that we are raising up those minoritized voices and helping our students understand how to do that as well. So we're going to look at some statistics. These statistics were shared by our district leaders, and you can see the sources they are pulled from at the bottom of the slide. So if you'd like more information, you can click there and go to those websites. This table shows some disparities in home ownership throughout different races. You can see that within a 10-year time period, so going from 2000 to 2010, that there's barely an increase in home ownership for people of color. So we have the Black population there, the Latinx population, and even the Asian Pacific Islander. There's a little bit of an increase, but still not nearly even close to white home ownership. And this drastically affects the way that our students are experiencing things in their home life, because we know home ownership can bring a sense of security and safety to many people. We know that 8% of Iowa's white households earn less than $20,000. What percentage of Iowa's Black households earn less than $20,000? Something I didn't know either, so let's learn together. So 33%. That is a lot more than 8% and fairly devastating for some of those students. I'm going to show you the Iowa median household income. This was really, really interesting to me. You can see that the gray line right there is our white family population, and the black is our Black family population, and then this red right here is showing the income gap. And so that's how much more white families on average are making, particularly in Iowa, from the years of 2005 to 2013. And that is a significant amount and is surely impacting the way that those families are living. This is showing our racial disparities in prison systems. This one was really hard to think about. 3% of Iowans are Black, but they represent what population of our state prisons? 23%. That's kind of mind-boggling. That's a really different percentage. We also know that people of color comprise about 15% of Iowa's youth population, but 45% of juvenile detention facilities, which is heartbreaking to think of how many children of color are in detention facilities and facing really difficult futures if they're starting out with something so challenging. So here is this graph. I think it's also helpful just to see the incarceration rates and how much higher they are, especially for Black individuals. This next slide shows current racial disparities in school leaders. That's us. That's the staff. That's all the way from people at the district office to teachers, EAs at our schools. As of 2012, 49% of public school students are students of color. What percentage of teachers are people of color? 18%. 18%, even though 49% of our students are students of color. And that just is really difficult because we know our students are not necessarily seeing themselves reflected in their teachers. So if you look at the graph to the right, you can see the majority of our teachers, especially in an area like ours, so we would probably be considered a large suburb, sometimes metro area. Schools are a representation of our societies, so we are communicating to our youth that the most powerful voice in teaching is a white voice. And I don't know about you, but that's not the message that I want to send. So why do these disparities exist? We've looked at all these statistics. The statistics may have shocked you. They certainly shocked me. But it's because of two different types of thinking. There's deficit thinking, and then there's critical consciousness. So deficit thinking is believing that students, particularly low-income or minority students, fail in school because their families experience deficiencies that obstruct the learning process. So they may have limited intelligence, they may lack motivation, they may have an inadequate home life or home socialization. These are things that you may have found yourself thinking before, or that many people think about our students of color, unfortunately. And what we want to do is shift that mindset into a critical consciousness mindset. So that's focusing on achieving an in-depth understanding of the world, including taking action against oppressive elements. Once we've gained a greater understanding of the world, hopefully we can make more positive changes. So something that I found interesting in my research is the concept of banking as education, or the concept that a teacher is the depositor, or the person who's giving all of the resources, and they are just depositing information into students. So the students will get the information, then they take the test, the teachers grade the test, and it's this continuous cycle. But we know that if a teacher is just talking and students are just listening, or a teacher is just disciplining and students are just getting in trouble, that this is not helping to set up a positive environment for learning. And this is not something that the Ames Community School District subscribes to. We do not want that concept for our teachers. If we think of, I think of the Charlie Brown teacher standing up in the front, wah, 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 wah. You can't even understand what she's saying, and that clearly is sending us the message that those students aren't getting it and they're not listening. And we don't want it to turn into a power struggle. We won't want students to continuously be frustrated with the situation. We want our learning environments to be a place where we're all working together to gain new understanding. So what is critical consciousness? What does it look like in the classroom? We know that it requires communication between students and teachers, and that this needs to be continuous and frequent communication so they feel they can use their voice. We know that teachers can also be students, just as students can be teachers, and we want to be able to learn from one another. We want to emphasize critical investigation rather than memorization. We want to encourage students to find their own topics of interest and not to have to fit some specific mold. And we also want to make sure that students see themselves represented in the curriculum. And while we don't always have control over the curriculum that we're asked to teach, we do have control over some of the resources that are brought in, and making sure that we see students represented in the books that are there and in the resources that we provide them to learn from. So, this is truly the chance to see our ability and transform from classroom to society, because we know our knowledge is power. If you look at this right here, I think what's most important and stands out to me is that transformation in the classroom leads to transformation in society. And every single one of these bullet points you see from classroom to society. So this process of sharing information is just continuous. We want to disrupt power dynamics in the classroom so that we can disrupt inappropriate power dynamics in society. We want to have solidarity in the classroom so that we have solidarity in society. When we're all just thinking about ourselves, we're focusing on competition, and that does not breed healthy communities. We want our communities to want to work together and not just be focusing on getting for themselves. So how do we do this? How do we provide equitable opportunities that ensure historically underserved population meet those same rigorous standards that we're talking about for all of our students? What we need to do is create and distribute opportunities. And in this case, we're looking at these boxes kind of like our opportunities. We want to make sure that we are helping versus hindering one another. The boxes in this picture don't always help students meet the same goal, and you can see that those goals are represented by apples. So if we give students all the same box, not all students are going to be able to reach that, because not all students are one size fits all. So sometimes we may need their boxes to look a little bit different, therefore their opportunities to be a little bit different. We also need to consider that while we may be giving them these boxes, there are lots of outside factors. Some parents may be providing lots of opportunities for their students to learn at home, causing them to be able to reach the apples at different speeds. Some students are even getting more or better quality apples at home. And we cannot assume how many boxes students are given. Something we need to consider in our role as educators is how do we determine what they need and what those factors are. Sometimes we need to slow down and listen versus just trying to hand them what we think they need to be able to learn. So, this is an opportunity to think about on your reflection form, what are some opportunities that you have been provided? An important part of becoming a critically conscious educator is understanding that we don't know or notice things, especially in our socialization. There are so many things that we just feel come to us easily, but are actually a part of the family that we were born into and the opportunities we've been provided. So this comic off to the right-hand side is really sad, but I think it helps kind of illustrate this. He's saying, this is for your own good, and kind of trying to climb up on the other students to get ahead and get up on the pedestal for themselves. That's that individualism that we talked about. And then on the very last slide, or the very last picture there, you can see that the student is saying, oh yeah, now that I've helped you, will you help me up? And he says, no. And he says, that would be reverse racism. Look, if I got up here myself, why can't you? And the truth is that, the white student had help. They had lots of help from the black student. And so to say that the white student got up there themselves is completely untrue. It took a team effort to be able to make that happen, just like in our society. So what are some action steps that we can take? I tried to lay them out. Again, remember, this is an open conversation, learning together. This isn't going to come easily. But first thing that you need to be able to do is to be able to reflect your students in the curriculum. Like we talked about, they should be able to see themselves. There are some wonderful books that have been written. One that I've put a page from over here is Anti-Racist Baby. And I love that it says in that book, anti-racist baby is bred, not born. Anti-racist baby is raised to make society transform. So we work together on this. We also need to be able to admit and acknowledge problems, not to be able to ignore things. That whole concept of I don't see color is not helpful, because we do. Just like you might notice that my hair is colored, you might notice a person has a different color skin, and that's not a bad thing. It means that you can understand something different about their life experience through talking to them, not just by looking at them. So if you say something that is inappropriate, or a student calls you out, or maybe another coworker, admit that, acknowledge it, understand that it's not a personal attack, and be able to learn from it so that we can move forward together. Also, encouraging advocacy, super, super important. And what's really cool is when we can help students advocate for themselves, and that can be done in many different ways. Maybe they can bring in something to share from home, or bring in a family member, or maybe there's somebody else in another grade level who has a similar life experience who they could get together with and have a lunch opportunity time, or maybe have a buddy time. Those are really important opportunities we need to look for. We also need to practice self-reflection. It comes down to admitting and acknowledging problems. If we can reflect in ourselves that there have been problems, then we can be able to move forward together. And also center other people's truths. This means don't question a reality that somebody is sharing with you. Just ask, how can I support you? Rather than, did that really happen? Or are you sure? We just need to learn more about the situation, and then we can grow together. Then also lean into any discomfort. This is not easy work, but we know that it's something that's important, so we'll continue to work together. So, a few more questions. Not that there haven't been a lot already, but like we said, this is heavy stuff. So, how have you begun to recognize your own socialization and become alert to problematic messages that you may have received? How are you connecting this learning to your current world? There's a lot happening in the world right now. We've got movements that are happening that are really important, that our families are certainly aware of and may be a part of in some instances. We have families going through difficult times as we work through COVID-19 and the impact that it has on jobs and all different sorts of things. And this is all a part of our own socialization and the things that our students are going through. So what may be impacting them, and what did you experience when you were their age? How did you learn? Right. How do we focus on student populations who often already have reduced opportunities? What ideas do you have? What commitments can you make? This is a lot. And we know that if we don't lean on the resources that we have as individuals, and we don't learn from each other, we're not going to be able to make the educational experience better for our students or for ourselves. Achieving equity in learning requires us to focus on student populations who have reduced opportunities for academic success. And we want to make sure that those who are struggling, whether they're English language learners, homeless, migrant students, or students who are academically behind their peers, we can't just stop teaching these students if we don't know what to do. We have to keep going. This quote from Toni Morrison over here, it says, if you are free, you need to free somebody else. And we all have different circumstances. I don't want to begin to presume you who are watching this have the same circumstances I do. I know many of you don't, but we want to hear your voice. We want to know what you've gone through. We want you to share the things that you've learned with the students at our school, and we want to be able to continue to grow together to make a more inclusive and equitable environment. So with all of that heavy stuff said, here are some more learning opportunities. And I would like you to choose at least one. If you'd like to do more than one, that would be great. But I'd like you to try to read an article. You could listen to a podcast or a radio program, or watch one of the following videos that's linked below. There are so many wonderful resources out there and things that we just didn't realize were happening. And so if you can take the time to educate yourself and learn more, we can do a whole lot better job together. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this, even though I kind of muddled through some of it. But if you have questions, my email is right here, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Or if I can't answer it myself, I'll try to direct you to somebody who would definitely have the answer. We've got a lot of amazing people here in this district. So thank you again so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.